The date is April 22nd, 1945. It is a quiet spring afternoon in Berlin. Deep underground, inside the Führer bunker, Adolf Hitler gathers the remaining members of the German High Command. The war map lies open on the table. Red lines surround the city from every direction. Berlin is encircled by the Soviet Red Army. Hitler's face is tense, exhausted, and filled with anger. He asks a simple but crucial question: where is Steiner? Steiner had been ordered to launch a counterattack and break the Soviet encirclement of Berlin. The men in the room exchange uneasy glances. No one speaks. In that heavy silence, Hitler understands the truth. Steiner has not attacked. In fact, he does not even have the forces to do so. At that moment, Hitler utters words that would be remembered forever. The war is lost. This moment is not a sudden collapse. It is the inevitable result of years of poor decisions, strategic miscalculations, and ideological blindness. To understand how Germany reached this point, how a nation that once dominated Europe was reduced to ruins, we must go back several years to the early days of the war. The early successes of Blitzkrieg, May 1940. German forces launch a series of rapid and aggressive operations against France, known as Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War. The strategy is simple but effective: speed, coordination, and overwhelming force. German panzer divisions, under the command of General Heinz Guderian, advanced through the Ardennes forest, an area the Allies believed to be impassable for armored units. The gamble works. French defenses collapse. British reconnaissance units and the French First Army are defeated. Within weeks, German forces reach the northern coast of France. From their positions, they can see the English Channel and, beyond it, the shores of Britain. The German advance is stunning in both speed and scale. Trapped between the sea and the advancing German army, British and French troops retreat toward the port of Dunkirk. By the end of May, nearly 400,000 Allied soldiers are cornered. It has taken the Germans only 20 days to bring the situation to this point. For Britain, the danger is existential. Losing such a large portion of its army could mean the end of the war effort. Emergency plans are drawn up. British leaders quietly begin considering how to defend the homeland against a possible Nazi invasion. The halt at Dunkirk, then, something unexpected happens. On May 24th, 1940, German armored units advancing toward Dunkirk suddenly receive an order to stop. At this point, the 1st Panzer Division is only about 24 kilometers from the trapped Allied forces. Two men are responsible for this decision. The first is Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, who fears that his fast-moving armored units are vulnerable to a counterattack and need time to regroup. The second is Adolf Hitler, who approves the halt. Normally an advocate of aggressive and decisive action, Hitler chooses caution. This decision proves disastrous. What appears to be a temporary and reasonable pause becomes one of the most costly mistakes of the war. The 3-day delay gives the British a priceless opportunity. Operation Dynamo, a narrow escape seizing the moment. Admiral Bertram Ramsay of the Royal Navy launches Operation Dynamo. The goal is simple but desperate: evacuate as many soldiers as possible from Dunkirk. British warships move toward the coast. Civilian vessels, fishing boats, ferries, private yachts are mobilized. Every available craft is used. Under constant attack from the German Luftwaffe, British and Allied soldiers are transported from the beaches to larger ships and carried back to England. The Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy work together to protect the evacuation. When the operation ends, the results are astonishing. Initially, British planners hoped to rescue 45,000 men. Instead, more than 338,000 soldiers are evacuated. Around 120,000 of them are French and Belgian troops. Although enormous amounts of equipment are abandoned, 65,000 vehicles and over 2,400 heavy guns, the core of the Allied army survives. For Germany, this is a strategic failure of immense proportions. A war that might have ended in 1940 is now prolonged. Hitler's inconsistency, sometimes reckless, sometimes overly cautious, has allowed his enemies to escape and regroup. Turning east, the Soviet gamble, despite the failure at Dunkirk, Germany dominates much of Europe by 1941. France is controlled through a puppet government. The Balkans and much of southeastern Europe are under German occupation. On the surface, Germany appears unstoppable. Yet Hitler is uneasy. He deeply distrusts Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union. Stalin has expanded Soviet influence by occupying neighboring states, and Hitler believes conflict with the Soviets is inevitable. At the same time, Hitler's ideological concept of Lebensraum, or living space, pushes him toward the east. Germany, he believes, must expand into fertile Slavic and Russian lands, particularly Ukraine. Although Germany and the Soviet Union have signed a non-aggression pact, mutual suspicion grows. On June 22, 1941, Hitler launches Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa, the scale of Barbarossa, is unprecedented. Nearly 3.8 million soldiers, over 3,300 tanks, and almost 2,800 aircraft are deployed along a front stretching 3,000 kilometers from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea. Initially, the operation is a success. German forces capture Minsk and Kiev. Millions of Soviet soldiers are killed, wounded, or captured, but the early momentum fades. The vastness of Soviet territory, the harsh climate, and poor infrastructure strain German supply lines. As the Germans push eastward, the front expands, making coordination and logistics increasingly difficult. Soviet forces adapt quickly. They retreat when necessary, avoid encirclement, and counterattack when opportunities arise. They implement a scorched earth policy, destroying crops, factories, and infrastructure to deny resources to the Germans. Entire factories are dismantled and moved east of the Ural Mountains, where they are rebuilt beyond German reach. More than 1,500 factories are relocated in this way. Stalingrad and the Turning Point Western Allies support the Soviet Union with supplies from Britain and the United States. Hitler's belief that the Soviet Union could be destroyed in a single campaign proves disastrously wrong. The Battle of Stalingrad becomes the turning point. German forces are encircled and eventually forced to surrender. It is the first time an entire German army is destroyed. From this point onward, the strategic initiative shifts permanently to the Soviets. General Georgy Zhukov launches massive counteroffensives using fresh Siberian troops. The Red Army begins pushing westward. Meanwhile, Germany's situation in the west worsens. The two-front nightmare Germany now faces war on two fronts. Allied bombing campaigns intensify. The Luftwaffe struggles to defend German cities while also supporting troops in the east. Resistance movements across occupied Europe drain German manpower and resources. Hitler's racist occupation policies ensure constant unrest. Instead of gaining local support, German forces are forced into endless counterinsurgency operations. Resources are stretched thin. Something has to give, and it is the Eastern Front. The oil crisis underlying all of Germany's problems is one critical weakness: oil. Despite its mechanized doctrine, Germany lacks sufficient oil reserves. Embargoes and limited access to foreign oil cripple its war economy. Romanian oil fields provide some relief, but not enough. Synthetic fuel production from coal proves inefficient. Blitzkrieg consumes vast amounts of fuel. Every offensive creates greater dependency on oil, forcing Germany into further risky operations to secure resources. Albert Speer warns Hitler that losing Romanian oil means losing the war. Attempts to reach the oil fields of the Caucasus fail at Stalingrad. German tanks, including the formidable Tiger, become useless without fuel. Some units cannot move even a few kilometers. Ironically, a highly mechanized army now relies heavily on horses and rail transport. Over 1 million horses are used by the German army. The final blow: Normandy and Berlin Allied air raids devastate German industry, railways, and refineries. Mobility collapses. In this weakened state, The Allies prepare the final blow. At Stalin's urging, Britain and the United States launch Operation Overlord. On June 6, 1944, Allied forces land in Normandy with 7,000 ships, 11,000 aircraft, and 156,000 soldiers. German command is caught off guard. Hitler believes the landings are a diversion, a misconception caused by Allied deception operations. German defenses collapse. Allied forces, aided by the French resistance, liberate France. Germany is now trapped between the Allies in the West and the Red Army in the East. Within a year, German defenses disintegrate. Strategic cities fall. On May 2, 1945, Berlin is captured. Hitler's war is over. Conclusion: Germany's defeat was not the result of a single battle or decision. It was the cumulative outcome of ideological obsession, strategic overreach, logistical failure, and inconsistent leadership. From Dunkirk to Stalingrad, from oil shortages to two-front warfare, each mistake pushed Germany closer to inevitable collapse. What began as a lightning war ended in total ruin.